Well, welcome to Martini Time. It's been a beautiful day here in Blackstone, the center of the world, but then you too are at the center of the world. So I've been on a roll here last few evenings, selecting from my artifacts, from the flotsam of my journey, the stuff that I've left in my wake. And so since I was talking about my father and his Zippo lighter and his watch and time, go back and you can see all my talks on YouTube, by the way, Ed Connolly at YouTube. I want to talk about his naval officer's sword. Now, this is his sword. It's a little one, kinda, but it's a dress sword. What naval officers, the graduates of the academy get. I don't know if they still do, but it's got his name on it. Edwin Gus Connolly, so that's me. And the only time he really had to wear it, I think, was at the inauguration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of his, and he said he had to pull the sword out like that. You know, you're marching and he's the officer and he pulls the sword out like that when they passed the president. And he said it was so cold, his hands were frozen, and he almost lost the sword and threw it at the president. So anyway, one of the few humorous stories from my father. But anyway, I'd always wanted that sword. I wanted him to give that to me because the sword is a factual thing. It's just a sword, but it's also the sword of discrimination. Now, I think mythologically and metaphorically, and the officer's sword, mythically, is the sword with which the Son of God, which is the officer, I'll tell you about that in a minute, with which the Son of God cuts between the unreal and the real. The sword of discrimination is a boon that the hero gets to tell the difference between the real and the unreal. So all of the mythologies have this sword. King Arthur has a sword, and Excalibur was stuck in the rock and you had to pull it out. So only the qualified one can grab and hold the sword of discrimination. So in that sense, you know, I always wanted my father to give me that sword because the father's in the evolutionary exchange, when the father and when the son takes over from the father, there's a transfer of power. And so on the mythical journey, on the hero's journey, that sword is a transfer of power. See, but the son has to be worthy. You can't give a jaguar to a teenager. You can't give power to somebody who is not able to handle it, you see. So I was always kind of like Charlie the tuna, who was not quite ready to go to the tuna factory, not quite ready for prime time. And that was kind of like my imprint, my belief in myself that I wasn't ready, you see. And so, of course, when you have that imprint, that unconscious belief, you create the conditions that affirm that belief. So sure enough, you're not ready. And you get to be affirmed in your belief that you're not ready, you see. So that was kind of like this unconscious imprint in my life. And sure enough, looking back over my path, I was never able to hold the power. You see, that's what yoga is all about. Yoga, the path of yoga, is to develop the mind and body so you can hold the power of God, so you can hold that energy, so you can hold the Shakti, the creative power, and not waste it or do wrong with it or harm other people, you see. Because when you get the power, if your ego is not ripe to drop, you see, you're going to misuse the power. You're going to hurt the earth, you see. So, this whole idea on the spiritual path is to go through the labor and the trials and the tribulations that make the psyche ready to handle grace, ready to handle power. Whether on the material plane, like the power of money, or on the spiritual plane, the power of creativity, the power of knowledge, and whatever. So you can see that on both levels, there has to be a readiness for you to be able to hold the power, to handle the power, to handle the truth, you see, because it's intoxicating, the power. I mean, it once, if you're got little shreds of ego in there, it's going to take that power and run with it, you see. And so my whole life, basically, looking back on it now, has been a trial and error path, tic-tacking like that, of getting and losing power. And so, anyway, so getting that sword, you see, what was kind of like for me, the arriving point where the father, you know that commercial with the, I love that commercial, where the techie, the kid comes home to tell his parents that he's got this new job in Google or somewhere doing software, and he says, so proud he's got this job in software. And his father's, well, that's very good, son. It's time for me to give you, you have earned your grandpappy's hammer. And he puts this big sledgehammer down, boom, on the table. And the son looks at it kind of nervously. He says, pick it up. You can't pick it up, can you? And the son's mother says, oh, but you're going to change the world, son. You can't pick up the hammer, can you? You can't pick up the sword. I love that. And so that Charlie the Tuna commercial, which is probably before a lot of you were born, is one of my favorites too. So my point is, if there is a point, how did I get that sword? Well, when my father died, and I didn't have it. My mother didn't give it. She hid it. I didn't know where it was. So when she died, my sister and I were going through the house, and I was, boy, where is that sword? Couldn't find it. Opened up a trunk, and it was packed with quilts. And there, in the bottom of the quilts, was the sword. There was the sword. So I felt like Prometheus. I'd still found it, I felt like the hobbits or something. Oh, precious, precious, precious. Oh, precious sword, you see. But anyway, so I really didn't get the sword from my father. I mean, I got the sword, but I didn't get that magical sword. So it wasn't until my uncle, my mother's brother, was incapacitated by a stroke, and I went down to Florida, to Tampa, and we brought him back to live with us, and all of his stuff and everything, and he gave me power of attorney, and he said, okay, you're the boss. Now that's the sword. Okay, you're the boss. Whatever you do is okay. You're the boss now. You're in charge now. So it wasn't until my uncle gave me the sword. So anyway, just a little reflection on the sword. And the reason this is the Son of God is because if you look at naval officers particularly, I remember my father saying proudly that when the senior naval officer goes to a foreign port, he is the direct representative of the President of the United States. He is in that foreign port, the direct emissary of the president. Just like the Son of God on earth is the direct emissary of God. And when you look at the uniforms of a naval officer, particularly the older ones where they had the shoulder pads, gold buttons, gold dripping on the hat, gold falling on the handle of the sword, you see, gold wherever anything sticks out, gold coming down from the sun God drips on anything sticking out on the Son of God. On the, I guess I had some buttons here. But you can see right here on the handle of the sword is where the gold from the sun god fell upon this mortal, you see. So it's a mythical understanding as well as factional, the mythic Son of God. So the Son of God, in Joseph Campbell, the Son of God is the hero, the hero's journey, the one who's going to make the quest for the Holy Grail, for the immortal bliss, the one who is going to go through the trials and tribulations. And when he starts, he's usually given a boon or some weapon, you see. And so that sword of discrimination is what you need when you're going to make the journey to tell the difference between the real and the unreal. It's kind of like something that awakens inside where you know what's real and we all have it. You just know what's real. That isn't real. I know it. That's fake. I know it. You can't learn it. You can't buy it. You can't, it has to be awakened by your intention to make the journey to find truth, your truth. If you're going to find your truth, who you are in truth, you see, you need to be able to tell the difference between the real and the unreal. So you should find a sword. Of course, an imaginary sword, but it's there. So, thanks for dropping in.